We are on the final countdown for the Inspector General report from the FBI DOJ on possible FISA abuse. FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, meant to catch spies and terrorists and somehow deployed against Carter Page, whom you could say is among the most unlikely assets of a foreign government you could find anywhere. Carter Page, who was a cooperative witness and just a all-around helpful guy to the FBI to nail some other Russians before. So if you're already on the FBI's radar and you've had to help them in another case involving possible intelligence activities of a foreign government against the United States, are you going to try to get the Russians to meddle in a presidential election? Get to coordinate with a presidential campaign? This is something that only delusional or stupid people could believe. And yet, guess what? When that Inspector General report comes out next week, there will be a whole lot of people who are claiming that it exonerates the FBI, that it means nothing was done wrong, even though Carter Page had a FISA collection done on him, which to any normal, any sane person is obviously absurd. I will still never forget when Carter Page sat next to me, and this was before I interviewed him the first time, and he told me that he met my dad at an event in New York City, of all things. And my dad was like, who? But Carter Page, it turned out he actually did meet him briefly. They shook hands or something. But it was quite an interesting moment. What a small world we live in. Carter Page is not a Russian spy. In fact, there was never even an allegation of any criminal. They couldn't even concoct a theory of criminal wrongdoing against Carter Page, and yet a U.S. citizen had all of his communications, cell phone records, emails, text messages, all of that just grabbed by the federal government because a few FBI agents were hysterical around this conspiracy theory that was really coming from the Hillary Clinton campaign. Let me skip to the end of the story for all of you. What we will find out, and I think we'll find out from the Durham report, I'm not sure if it'll be before or after the 2020 election, though. Remember, this is Inspector General Horowitz at the DOJ FBI. What we will find out from the U.S. Attorney Durham, who is a lawyer's lawyer, a prosecutor's prosecutor, according to both sides of the aisle up to this point, what you'll find out from him eventually is that the Hillary Clinton campaign got this whole thing started. That this whole Russia, it really had its origins in the Hillary Clinton campaign, that this was a Hillary info op against Trump, and that because people are such wild-eyed left-wing partisans, because Democrats have become such petty totalitarians, they seized on this and then abused their power in whatever ways they could, either in the press or in the government, to run with this theory, to pursue this theory, to really almost overturn the results of an election based on this theory. And it came from the Clinton camp very early on. That is my prediction to you as to where all of this is heading, although it'll be some time before we get there. What are we going to find out about the Inspector General report? Well, let's just remember a few things before we do our pregame analysis here of everything. Let's remember that the Inspector General, in this case Horowitz, was an Obama appointee who oversaw a 500-plus page report on Hillary Clinton's emails that was absolutely full of political bias. And Horowitz concluded, as if by magic, that all of that bias in no way affected the decisions that the Department of Justice made about Hillary Clinton's emails. I am here to tell you, and you won't want to hear this probably, I'm here to tell you that you should get ready for round 2 of this. What you will likely see in this Inspector General report is a whole lot of dubious decision-making, just like with the press, right? The press gets stories wrong, but the stories they get wrong are overwhelmingly, I would even argue entirely when it pertains to Trump, anti-Trump. It's always anti-Trump stories. You will see that the mistakes, that the decision-making at the FBI, and, FBI is within DOJ, but I'll use these, go back and forth over these, that the decisions made in the Department of Justice about this FISA warrant and this baseline theory that the Trump campaign was somehow colluding with Russia, the decisions made through all of that, the truth is, my friends, that they were all somehow negative. The bad decisions were negative for Trump. Doesn't mean it was illegal. But the tie goes to the runner. Well, the tie goes to the anti-Trump deep state here every time. That's what's going to happen. So you'll see this pattern of, we got to get this FISA. Yeah, we got to do whatever we got to do. We got to stack it with the dossier. No one verifies anything in the dossier. It turns out the dossier is all crap, and it's a Hillary Clinton opposition document. You're going to include that? Oh, but, the excuse there is that the FBI agents involved were lazy and stupid enough to believe the dossier. Okay. They're not bad people. They're just dumb and lazy. That's going to be the excuse, implicit in what comes out in this report. That's what they're going to fall back on. The bureaucracy, you see, is not tainted. It's just inept. It's just not very good at what it's supposed to do. But that they can live with. That's the cost of doing business. Isn't that interesting? There is one wild card in this scenario, though. You see, they know that they can count on Horowitz to be an institutionalist, to be somebody who wants to defend the edifice of the Department of Justice. It's so easy to convince yourself if you work in these government agencies. I worked for the CIA, man, I know. It's so easy to say, well, even if we colored a little bit outside the lines here, even if this looks a little shady and shakes the faith of the American people that these bureaucrats who are empowered for very specific ends do in fact abuse those ends for partisan reasons, we still really need these places. We really need the Department of Justice. We need the FBI. We need all these different 17 members of the intelligence community. And because we need them, if we have to give them more than the benefit of the doubt, if we have to look the other way at what a rational person would understand as malfeasance, well, then that's just the price of protecting these institutions. Now, notice this is different than even somebody inside the bureaucracy who is left-wing, who is ideologically willing to, the Loretta Lynch approach. Yeah, I'm going to meet with Bill Clinton on the tarmac, pretend it was a non-sequitur conversation, who cares, all an accident, I don't know what was said there, but she didn't want anyone else to know either. There are ideologues inside the bureaucracy, people that clearly take the power that they have to try to help Team Democrat, help the left, help the socialists inside this country, because they are the party of the state. But then you just have people who are not necessarily, and I don't know enough about Horowitz to make the determination as to which one of these camps he falls into, although he'll be in one of them. And we know this because of the Hillary email report was a monument to political bias. Political bias everywhere. That's clear. But did that bias affect the decision-making? This would be like somebody saying to you, hey, this federal judge who's presiding over this case, he's on tape the week before he started presiding over the trial, saying that the defendant is a moron, an idiot, smells bad, terrible. But even though all of the judgments during the case made by the judge went against this defendant, we have no clear evidence that the bias that the judge established beforehand influenced any of those decisions. That is exactly what the DOJ did with Hillary's emails. Now, you would probably say to me, Buck, hold on a second. Federal judge would have to recuse himself. Oh, you mean like Loretta Lynch recused herself, by the way, as the attorney general from the Hillary? Oh, no, she never recused herself from that, did she? Remember how the Democrats play the game. Remember how we play. We have all these Republicans who are the little suck-ups in the classroom who run around, I never play rough. Oh, will the teacher give me a pat on the head? You know, they tend to be never Trumpers, and this is what they do. They run around, oh, how could we be so harsh with the other side? While the other side is just pounding our faces into the pavement all the time. That's how the left plays the game. And we walk around, oh, we have people on our side. Why does Trump say the mean things about the Democrats? I'm glad somebody does. It's about time. But they don't recuse themselves from these things. They want to make sure they maintain control and they can keep the pressure on their opponents. This is what you're going to see play out once again, though. The judge who says he hates somebody, then is in the trial, makes every decision against that person, but at the end of the day, you can claim, you can't prove that the judge made all those decisions because he hated the person, right? This is what you're going to see in this Inspector General report. This is my prediction for you. There'll be someone changed some stuff here, but, they changed stuff to make the FISA warrant application stronger, which is negative for Trump, of course, in the Trump campaign, than it would have otherwise been. And, maybe they didn't do as much due diligence. They kind of rammed through all this stuff just so they could get the FISA going. Because remember, what if things had turned out a little bit differently? We always think about Russia collusion and the possibility that using Carter Page would have been a way to backdoor get access to anyone that in the Trump campaign orbit that he had spoken to and any information he may have about this alleged Russia collusion. But what if they had found something else? What if there was some other criminality or collusion of some kind? What if there were campaign finance? Anything that they could have found in this whole process. Look at how they went after Manafort. Look at how they're going after Roger Stone. You think they would have overlooked? This was a way to get a fantastic, wide open access to somebody in constant contact with the Trump campaign and different senior members of that campaign, and to do so on a fishing expedition. And to think that it would all be kept secret, by the way, which, as we know now, it will not be. This is a perfect way to bring down a presidential campaign or to bring down a president, and this is what the other side did. But there is one wrinkle in the left's plans here. Because like I said, Horowitz will not allow for there to be any real consequences or accountability for the FBI. Won't allow it. It's not going to happen. Doesn't matter what's there. He already said Lisa Page showed us that we can't really trust the FBI or raises, I forget the verbiage, raises core issues of trust of the FBI. We already know that's there. But now we look at the rest of it and we say to ourselves, hold on a second. They're going to present us with all this evidence of bias and wrongdoing, and then they're going to claim that there was no bias or wrongdoing. That's what's going to happen here again, isn't it? And the answer is yes. That's what I'm telling you to get ready for. But there's one problem. They're not the only ones who get to shape the narrative here. There's another individual, as you know, one of my favorites in the administration, another individual out there who knows this game very well and probably saved Trump's presidency, although we don't often talk about it that way, because he knows the ambush that the left had set for this president. He understands what they were doing. He knows what the dirty politics were. And that man is Attorney General Barr. The story in the Washington Post says it all, my friends. Barr disputes key Inspector General finding about FBI's Russia investigation. This is from the Washington Post. We know exactly what's going on here. This is the story published yesterday. Attorney General William P. Barr has told associates he disagrees with the Justice Department's Inspector General on one of the key findings in an upcoming report that the FBI had enough information in July 2016 to justify launching an investigation into members of the Trump campaign, according to people familiar with the matter. The Justice Department Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, is due to release his long-awaited findings, but behind the scenes at the DOJ, disagreement has surfaced about one of Horowitz's central conclusions on the origins of the Russia investigation. The discord could be the prelude to a major fissure within financial law enforcement on the controversial question of investigating a presidential campaign. Barr has not been swayed by Horowitz's rationale for concluding that the FBI had sufficient basis to open an investigation on July 31st, 2016. My friends, this is the Achilles heel of the whole situation. What have I been saying to you now for years? Mueller didn't even touch this. Why? How did this whole thing get started? Where did this come from? Oh, we're to believe that they just happened to have people near Papadopoulos, but Papadopoulos happened to say a thing that, please, we're not idiots. They had set up to get Papadopoulos before this conversation he allegedly had with Downer in a bar in the UK. I believe Papadopoulos is running for Congress, by the way. Yes, that's what they believe that they want us to believe that. Barr knows this is going to be the critical question. There will be all this information presented, and people who are very invested in this will tell you, they will feign stupidity, they will feign an abject lack of judgment, and they will say to you that the Russia collusion investigation was a duly predicated investigation from the start, meaning that there was something other than political malice as the real motivation for looking into all of this. Barr is going to look at this, according to this report, and I believe it, and say, not so fast. You're going to investigate a presidential campaign based on what a very low-level advisory member of the campaign says to a guy in a bar in the UK? You're going to make that call? You're then going to get FISA on another low-level member of an advisory board of the Trump campaign? Really? And you're going to act like that's fair? I mean, look, you have people that walk into police stations across the country and say that, Elvis is in their shower and Osama bin Laden is hiding under their bed. If you sent in a SWAT team, kicked in the front door, and shot a couple of people because you're doing a raid to find Elvis and Osama, people would want to ask some questions. Like, what the heck are you doing? That is going to be what we are faced with by the FBI now. They were going to want us to believe they made stupid decisions in good faith, not because of politics, and Barr is going to look at them, it sounds like, and say, not so fast. We know what you were up to. This whole thing was, in fact, a hoax, an ambush, and a scam. So people were making a lot of jokes about Bloomberg getting into the race at this point, and it turns out that Mayor Bloomberg has jumped into, in a very crowded field, 5th place, according to the most recent poll I've seen right away. He's at like 6%, ahead of Kamala Harris. This tells you a lot about the media's love affair with the Harris campaign is that's going to have to come to an end at some point. There is really just no way that anyone's going to be able to continue to pretend that she is, as she once referred to herself, a top-tier candidate. She is not a top-tier candidate, but this is what the message is that we're getting from the Democrat voters who are being polled here. They all know one thing and one thing only: they don't want Trump to be president. After that, it gets very hazy for a lot of them, because no person could look anyone else in the eye with seriousness and say, yeah, Joe Biden's the future of America. I mean, there was a cartoon circulating yesterday where a brilliant cartoonist, created this little cartoon just set that Joe Biden, yeah, and I got hair on my legs, and my legs are the blonde hair, and the hair is sticking up, staring at the sky, sun shining down on the legs, little kids hopping around, jumping on my lap. I love it because my blonde leg hair's like all crazy straight, and then it's not, and then it's, it's like flying around my head, and I'm crazy. Some guy created a video of it, and it was amazing. It really was. I wish I could show it. I wish those of you who are just listening on audio, we could show it to you. But it was stunning. It was stunning to watch because this is the person. We're in a country of over 320 million people. And the best the Democrats can do is this really old, not very bright, weird guy with some corruption issues that should get a little more investigation, I think. I think all of that is fair. This guy's going to be the next president of the United States. He's going to be the one with the nuclear codes. We've been told for years Trump is not fit for office. Oh, I'm sorry. Joe Biden is fit for office? I had seen references to the infamous corn pop showdown. But I realized yesterday that we had not addressed the corn pop issue here on the show. And I feel like I am remiss as a result, because in that same campaign stop where he's talking about, the hair on my leg is blonde and it sticks in the sky and the sun in my eye and 7 little chipmunks sitting on a branch eating a lot of acorns. You know what I'm talking about. He also talked about his fight at the public pool, the terrifying gang leader known as Corn Pop. Let us revisit this, shall we? Play clip 1.
I learned a lot. And I learned that it makes a difference. This was the diving board area, and I was one of the guards, and they weren't allowed to. It was a 3-meter board. And if you fell off sideways, you landed on the darn cement over there. And Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys. And I did. And back in those days, to show how things have changed, one of the things you had to use, if you used pomade in your hair, you had to wear a bathing cap. And so he was up on the board, wouldn't listen to me. I said, hey, Esther, you, off the board, or I'll come up and drag you off. Well, he came off, and he said, I'll meet you outside. My car, these were all public housing behind it. My car, there was a gate out here. I parked my car outside the gate. And he said, I'll be waiting for you. He was waiting for 3 guys in straight razors. Not a joke.
I have to note that here you have Joe Biden, who I've heard giving speeches before, and I actually went to a speech where a number of third-tier Democrat candidates back in 2008 were giving speeches, and Joe Biden was one of them because he was right there with Kucinich, and I don't even remember who else, for people that had no shot of winning the presidency. But now he should be president, they tell you, because they got nothing else. They got nobody else on the bench. That's the problem. They got all these candidates, nobody that anyone's excited about. But I noticed they go, yeah, there's a guy named Corn Pop, and Corn Pop had a bunch of bad dudes. Am I the only one who picks up? He's like a little bit of a Southern accent creeps into Joe Biden when he's trying to be a little folksy. I'm not making it. The guy's from Delaware. He's got as much of an accent as I do. Yeah, Corn Pop was 3 meters up on the board, and I was Corn Pop got the thing in the hair and the buppity-buppity-bupp and the poopity-poop, and, I'm just talking like this because I like to talk like that. This is Joe Biden, everybody. This is how Joe Biden's talking all of a sudden. I mean, it reminds me of Hillary. Hillary got away with this too a while, but she was like, I'm so done tired, my feet done hurt. This was Hillary. I was like, when did Hillary all of a sudden? And if you go back and look at clips of her, because, she kind of actually has like more of a Midwestern thing. If you really listen to her intonation is, by the way, all the Midwestern people listening to this right now are booing the crap out of me. That's all right. My Midwestern accent is not good. I agree. But she did do that sometimes. Joe Biden's doing it here too. These politicians. Remember Joe Biden? I'll put you all back in chains, Joe Biden said. Yeah, so this is the Corn Pop showdown. First of all, I mean, even in the 50s, do we really think that there was some nefarious character who carried around straight razors and threatened people in public places named Corn Pop? I'm not saying it's a lie. I'm just saying it doesn't ring true. But the great Corn Pop showdown of like 1962 or something, whenever this was, I don't know. Here's how it went. Play clip 2.
There's a guy named Bill Wright, Mouse, the only white guy, and he did all the pools. He was the mechanic. And I said, what am I going to do? He said, come down here in the basement where mechanics, where all the pool filter is. You know the chain, there used to be a chain that went across the deep end. And he cut off a 6-foot length of chain. He folded up, he said, you walk out with that chain. And you walk to the car and say, you may cut me, man, but I'm going to wrap this chain around your head. I said, you kidding me? He said, no, if you don't come back. And he was right. So I walked out with the chain. And I walked up to my car. And they had, in those days, you used to remember the straight razor. You'd bang them on the curb, get them rusty, put them in the rain barrel, get them rusty. And I looked at him, but I was smart then. I said, first of all, I said, when I tell you to get off the board, you get off the board, and I'll kick you out again, but I shouldn't have called you Esther Williams. I apologize for that. I apologize, but I didn't know that apology was going to work. He said, you apologize to me? I said, I apologize for that, not for throwing you out, but I apologize for what I said. He said, okay, close the straight razor, and my heart began to beat again.
I mean, Joe Biden's telling you here that he was like about to get into some gang warfare kind of fight. Remember back in the day when to take the straight razor and make it all rusty? You know, is that a thing? People make the straight razor rusty so that why they think they're going to give you tetanus? I don't understand what this is all. But again, this is just this guy. Look, he's just full of it, man. He's always been full of it. It's amazing. He's like, I'm going to tell you to get off the board. Got to get off the board. I've heard Joe Biden. He speaks normally without any of this intonation whatsoever, but he thought that this would go over well with his crowd. But even more than that, it's just such a weird story for him to tell, and I don't believe it. I mean, Joe Biden, he's walking to meet a guy who has a straight razor in the parking lot of a public pool. There's going to be people everywhere, and he takes a chain out with him. I mean, do you believe that Joe Biden is some kind of badass who's willing to get into, is this like the movie, what is it, the movie Warriors, right? Isn't that where the gangs in New York where they got the chains?
Biden, come out to play,
Yeah, I don't even know what that is, but
I haven't seen the Warriors.
It's from, yeah.
Come out to play.
I just know of the movie, but I know they all carry around chains. That used to be a thing. Gang members that would carry a chain. Chain is not that good of a weapon.
Unless you're playing Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if someone gives me the choice between a chain and a baseball bat, you go baseball bat every time. I think you go knife over chain, too.
Yeah, you could throw it.
Yeah. It reminds me of how we used to think that, like, nunchakus were a serious weapon. They're, in fact, illegal because people got so scared of them from movies. They're illegal in New York, California. No, you cannot have, it's like 2 pieces of metal with a string between it. That's illegal. And it's just because there were all these movies in the 70s and 80s where these gang members had, nunchakus or numchucks, or, people call them different things. I believe the proper terminology is nunchakus, but people call them numchucks.
That's what Michelangelo said.
That's right.
The orange Ninja Turtle.
It's not. I mean, people saw that Bruce Lee movie, and he's like hitting all these guys with. No, it's not. It's not that easy, actually. You really don't want to be squaring off against somebody with nunchucks. It's not. It's not the best weapon. Not that I've been in a lot of gang fights, not gonna lie, But I'm not the one sitting here like, hey, and then a bunch of guys said they're gonna cut me with a straight razor, and I grabbed a chain, and I put on my leather jacket with the cut off sleeves, and had my gang colors on the back, and I just went out, Your next president of the United States, everybody. And this isn't from like 20 years ago. This isn't like him talking as a youth. This is a few weeks back. This is what the Democrats are. This is why Michael Bloomberg could get in the race, and he's at 6% right off the bat. This is the front runner. We're not just making fun of some like kooky candidate that nobody's serious about. This is the Democrat front runner. This guy. What is here's a fun question to ask your Democrat friends. What is the big idea that Joe Biden is running with and in support of? He's just a vessel for people's longing for the Obama era. That's really it. And that's not an idea. That's That's a fantasy. We're not going back to the Obama era. We're not going back to politics pre-Trump. Liberals need to get a hold of this. They need to get an understanding of this. But I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. Everybody, we got our friend David Harsanyi in the mix. He is a writer at National Review. He's got a great piece up on National Review right now. Anti-majoritarianism isn't un-American, although we're going to put a pin on that for 1 second, so I want to ask him about some of the latest and greatest. David, great to have you back.
Always a pleasure. Thanks.
So we were just talking about Bloomberg and Biden. By the way, are you having as much fun with the blonde hair, straight legs, and corn pop story situation as everybody else?
I am. You know, how it works these days is I'm not sure if things are actually true or not. I have to sort of research to make sure that these things are actually happening, and they are legitimate. So I am having fun, yes.
I mean, how can this guy... What is it? Why is Biden? I was just talking about this before we called you. Why is Biden the front runner? What is your take on how is this guy who's really somewhat clownish and preposterous and not even entertaining clownish? What's going on?
Well, I think people envision him as a certain kind of candidate, and without really paying that much attention to him, people forget he's had failed presidential candidacies, and not like slightly failed, but just like complete disasters before. And he's never been that great a politician. I think what's happened is that people are looking for a candidate who can win, so some kind of moderate candidate, and he, I guess, fits that bill and has enough experience and name recognition that it puts him in the lead. And people keep telling me he's going to fall apart and it's going to be over, but every poll I see, he seems a pretty clear front runner to me.
Now, Bloomberg is in at, I think, 6% in the poll. Do you think that he shakes things up and makes any noise that's worth hearing, at least in terms of changing things around?
I'm not sure yet. I think that there's obviously it feels to me like Democrats haven't found the candidate that they're looking for, someone who they feel like can win, someone who's not too far to the left, at least certain Democrats. So it's possible that he can take some of that away from maybe Biden or Mayor Pete or things like that. But in the end, though, I don't think he's likable enough, and I don't think that his positions are of the moment, especially on the left.
Why can't Mayor Pete get more traction?
I think he's actually kind of a lightweight when you really listen to him. I mean, I don't know if that's the reason. I just think maybe it's a name recognition thing, maybe because it looks like he's in second grade. I mean, it could be various things that turn off people, and there's still so many people running, so you never know. Once Kamala Harris drops out or other people, he may get, those people might come over to him. So out of the people still left, I think he still has somewhat of a chance.
And do you think that in taverns and local bars across the country, people are going to be pouring out some shots for the tragically ended Sexton campaign?
Yeah, sometimes I'm like, oh, yeah, he was running. It's weird. I guess people have nothing to lose anymore when they run, so you get tons of people running just for maybe because they want to be VP or something like that. I mean, is like Michael Bennett still running? I don't even know.
Yeah, that's a good question. By the way, what are your expectations for the IG report as it's just now days away? I mean, I've been telling everybody that I think that there'll be some bad stuff, but it'll be just like what the bureaucracies always do, which is say, well, there were some minor mistakes made, but overall everything's fine and there's nothing really to be worried. There's no deep state. There's nothing to be worried about. What do you think?
I think that you're probably right, though. All the leaking going on these days and all the sort of preemptive defenses that are going on, it makes me think that maybe that people are a little bit worried about what's in there. But I mean, generally, you don't see the bureaucracy saying, they sort of, give you a pat on the hand or whatever. They're not going to really come out.
Yeah. Do you remember the 500-page Horowitz report where it was? I read this thing and I remember thinking, well, this looks terrible. I mean, this is bias everywhere. They're like, well, just because you have every reason to believe somebody's biased doesn't mean their actual decision. I mean, it seemed to me that the Inspector General report set a standard where unless you have people working the DOJ who are saying, I am doing this because I think Hillary's going to be president and I want to help her, there's no bias. You can't prove it.
Right. We can never prove, or it's almost impossible to prove intent, but that's why they have rules set up so that you don't either create the impression that there's some bias going on, or that there is bias going on. So obviously when you break those rules, you break them for a reason. When you say things, you say them for a reason. So to me, it's incredible that we keep talking about the intent rather than the professionalism of the agents that you're talking about.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a drop in the stock, in my opinion, of the FBI and the DOJ whenever this thing comes out.
It's actually terrible in a way that Americans can't trust their institutions anymore. And it's not, everyone wants to blame Trump and Trump fans and all that stuff, but they do most of this to themselves.
No, I think that's absolutely true, and I think as we continue to see the Democrat standard here is always Trump is destroying our institutions. And then they talk about destroying our institutions. And maybe that's actually a perfect place, David, to transition to your piece up in National Review. So, guys, hold one sec. We'll get into that.